The light shines on in the darkness, but the darkness has not mastered it. What Bible verses do you have plastered on your walls, or maybe on your phone, in your car, or on your mirror? Maybe something like Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper and give you good hope and a future. Or perhaps popular John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. Or my personal favorite, Ecclesiastes verse 1 from chapter 2, verse chapter 1. Meaningless, meaningless, says the preacher, vanities of vanities, all is meaningless. Why do we like these verses? What do these short slogans or sayings do for us, or what do they do to us? Well, one of the things that these short sayings and slogans do, they help us remember stuff. Every good boy does fine helps us remember the lines on a treble clef. Right? Good. Make sure I got that one right. They also help motivate us. Something like, just do it, or carpe diem, or grow through what you go through. Help us motivate us to get through things. Or we can also use these sayings to help us live our lives, or guide our lives with things like, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Or live each day like it's your last. But perhaps the most powerful way that we can use these slogans or these sayings is to use them in a way to tell us who we are, to tell us what's going on in our life, and tell us who's in control. And it's when we use these slogans or sayings in this way that they become much more than just a cliche or just much more than a short little saying, but they become something that we live in and that we live through. This Christmas morning, let's consider this proverb. The light shines on in the darkness, but the darkness has not mastered it. This Christmas morning, whether you were paying attention or not, the sun rose. Darkness was put away. The light shines on in the darkness, and the darkness has not mastered it. This Christmas morning, also, well, maybe you weren't paying attention, in the gospel reading of John, we heard about light. There's possibly thousands of different sermons and many different themes and ideas in the first chapter of John. But one of them that we cannot ignore is light. See, light had its beginning at the very beginning. Immediately after God created the heavens and the earth, the first thing that he does is make light. And not only does he create light, but he actually separates the light and the darkness. They're two separate things. So even from the beginning of time, they're opposing things, light and darkness. But the light shines on in the darkness, and the darkness has not mastered it. And throughout the Old Testament, light is also a very important and dominant theme in the story of the salvation of the people of Israel. And the people of Israel were led away from slavery in Egypt by a pillar of light. God's temple regulations include specific instructions about having oil to provide light for the temple. And the Psalms say how even light and darkness are the same for God. Isaiah prophesies, as we heard this morning, that the people walking in darkness have seen a great light. And he encourages the people to arise, shine, for your light has come. And we're used to hearing every week, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you. Throughout the entire Old Testament, the light shines on in the darkness, and the darkness has not mastered it. And this Christmas morn, we are right to rejoice because the light, the true light, has come to make his home among us. But on this Christmas morn, we're also reminded of that which is not the light, of darkness. And we're also reminded of the power of darkness, that which is at enmity with God, which is against God and everything that God is. And we're reminded that that power of darkness and darkness is around us even today. A day that's so often full of family, friends, and food. There are homeless people who will go hungry today. People are isolated and alone. Family members mourn the death of their loved ones, recent or years past. We worry what next year will bring. More killings, more suffering, more sickness, more darkness. Yes, even on one of the most joyous days in the year of the church, we cannot ignore the darkness that rests around us like a palpable mist that we can feel. Yet, in some way, and somehow, the light shines on in the darkness, and the darkness has not mastered it. For into the darkness has come the light. For in the beginning of time was the Word. And this word was with God, and what God was also this Word. And everything was created by this Word, and in the Word was life. And the life that was in this Word was the light of all people. And this word we know is Christ, the babe in the manger, the light of the world, who came to the world to be the light. And in the manger, the light shines on in the darkness, and the darkness has not mastered it. For even the world that the light came into was still dark like it is today. But in his coming, he brought light to shine. And that is why we are here today, to celebrate the fact that the light has come among us. And we know the countless stories, and we remember some today. The stories of Jesus bringing light into the midst of darkness, into the moments when it seemed like the darkness had won, when it seemed like darkness had actually mastered the light. In John's Gospel, we hear lots of stories, but right after chapter 1, we hear of Jesus going to a wedding. And his mom comes up to him and says that there's no more wine. So Jesus tells her to bring him some jars of water, and he turns them into wine. In a joyous moment where light is shining, Jesus brings more light. Immediately after this, we find Jesus at the temple. But he's not bringing more light here in that same sense. No, he makes a whip of cords and then drives out all the salesmen from the temple. And to further make his point, he flips over all the tables, scatters the coins, the money exchangers. In the midst of corruption and abuse of power, the light shines on. At a well, we then hear Jesus talking to a Samaritan woman. In a culturally unacceptable action, Jesus asks the woman for a drink. Her response is not that exciting or surprising, but Jesus tells her that there will be a time when true worshipers will worship in spirit and in truth. A time when true worship is not defined by nationality or race. In the midst of cultural barriers and boundaries, the light shines on. Later, Jesus meets a royal official who begs him to come and heal his son from his illness. After Jesus rebukes the people for only believing because of the signs they see, he tells him that his son will be healed. And the man returns home and someone runs out to him and says that his son is going to be better, that he's getting better. And the man notices that when the servant says that this is when he started to recover was the same exact time that Jesus told him that his son would live. Even in the darkness of sickness and illness, the light shines on. And these are all within only the first 4 chapters of John. The rest of his gospel is full of moments when the light is shining on into the darkness. But perhaps the greatest moment, the moment when we see the light shining on in the darkness and the darkness not mastering it, is the day after the darkest day, 3 days after the darkest day, when that manger to the cross, to the tomb, when it does appear that darkness has finally mastered the light and the light is no more. Even in death, even in the tomb, the light shines on in the darkness, and the darkness has not mastered it. And that same light shines today as well. Whenever homeless people are brought food, shelter, work, and just laws, the light shines on. Whenever the church community, our community, surround those who are alone or isolated or mourning, the light shines on. Whenever we care for those who have lost their loved ones, the light shines on. Even in the midst of death, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not mastered it. And this morning, soon we will taste, we will eat and feast on the light that shines on in the darkness. For in the midst of our own darkness, of our sin, our doubt, and our brokenness, the light of faith and forgiveness comes in the very body and blood of the true light. And in the midst of whatever darkness that you and I face in our lives, the light of Christ shines on, and the darkness has not mastered it. So when you come forward this morning to receive communion, feast on the light that was given for you. Feast on the light that shines into your darkness and gives you light. This Christmas morn, we rejoice, for the true light of the world has come into the world to shine his light into the darkness and to show us, to show you, that the darkness has still not mastered it. And so, with Bach and with all Christians of all time, we sing, "Break forth, O beauteous heavenly light, and usher in the morning. Ye shepherds, shrink not with affright, but hear the angel warning. This child now weak in infancy, our confidence and joy will be, the power of Satan breaking, our peace eternal making." For the light does shine on in the darkness, and the darkness has not mastered it. Amen.